Go back to where you were created in X2 Wolverine's Revenge. The game. Use your mutant powers and stealth to uncover your past and a few other surprises.
I don't like surprises.
X2 Wolverine's Revenge. Rated Teen.
Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back to a special one for yours truly. Today, we're talking about X2 Wolverine's Revenge. And honestly, the stars aligned for this video. Over on Retro Rewind, we sat down to watch X2 XMEN Unites, and oh my gosh, what a movie. Absolutely loved it. And we're going to be talking a lot about X-Men and Deadpool, both here on Rebound and over on Rewind throughout the coming weeks, thanks to Deadpool and Wolverine finally coming around. And this just was one of those moments where I had a different video planned for today, one that frankly probably would have performed way better, but my heart was telling me, Maddie, there's no better time to talk about this game than right now. You just talked about the movie tie-in over on Rewind. You have Deadpool and Wolverine coming out soon. Now's the time to talk about a lot of X-Men games, but you got to get this one off your chest. You see, for me, I have two games that come to mind as random superhero games that I don't see people talk enough about that mean a lot to me because I played them growing up. X2 Wolverine's Revenge really served to me as my true introduction into the world of X-Men. From there, I would have gotten to the comics. I got into playing other games in the X-Men universe, like X-Men Next Dimension, the 3D fighting game. I love that game, and so much more. Pretty much everything but the movies, as we're addressing now over on Rewind. Now, with that in mind, the other game beyond X2 Wolverine's Revenge that has that strong sentimental value for me is Batman Vengeance. I adore this game from top to bottom, but I don't feel like I see enough people talking about just how fantastic it is. And so I find X2 to be in that same pocket. Is it perfect, especially after a replay? No, and I'll get into why. But there's so much charm here and so much meaning for it personally to me that I just had to talk about it. So welcome to a special one. This video is going to be a lot like Star Wars: The Clone Wars, where we sat down and got really sentimental about a game that I don't think many of you are sentimental about, but nonetheless, we will talk about it. So if you're new here and you're into nostalgic and retrospective content, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. Before I talk about story, gameplay, any of that fun stuff, I really want to talk about, with this game, a deleted scene that I recently discovered, and I just want you to see it for yourself. It is a deleted scene including Spider-Man with the voice actor that was used for Spider-Man 64 or Spider-Man 1 on PS1, as well as Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro. It was this massive clashing of worlds that I never anticipated. So I'm gonna roll the clip if you haven't seen it. Check it out for yourself, and let's get a little bit more into it.
Easy there, buddy.
You picked a bad day to come sneaking up on me, bub. I'd say you strayed off your home turf a bit.
Heard about the big bust out at the Void. So I rode out here in the chartered bus along with the other superheroes who can't fly or teleport.
Right, and my Aunt Tilly body doubled for Madonna.
Can you use a hand here? I hear you're ramping up for a showdown with Magneto.
Hi, I'm William Shatner. My car broke down while I was on my way to give a speech about how TV keeps families together. Say, would you like to hear it?
I got a kick out of how animated Spider-Man is, just talking like this to Wolverine. It's so funny because that cutscene, if you actually play the full game, if you will, you'll note that that is leading into the Magneto boss fight. And part of me is like, I bet they deleted it because they're sitting there going like, Spider-Man should be helping you out. But what a cool meeting of worlds. Not just, oh, Spider-Man and Wolverine. We've seen that before. I've talked about it in games like Ultimate Spider-Man in our retrospective where I show that there's a boss fight as Venom where you fight Wolverine. And that stuff is really cool. But that personal Spider-Man connection there where it's like, oh my God, that's the 64 Spider-Man was so cool to me. Absolutely love that. But they deleted it. It's an unlock you can get if you get like all the dog tags and everything. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, this game itself, why does it hold so much value to you? Like I mentioned, this is my introduction to Wolverine. And this was one of those games that I call it got personal style game. And not in the personal way you think I'm about to give you some gut-wrenching tale. I mean personal like this game kicked the snot out of me because it's pretty poorly balanced in some ways, and I beat my head against the wall for a while. I remember bringing this game over to a friend's house, my older brother's friends, in fact, because I looked up to it and I was like, I need help with this game. One of his friends was really good at games. I was like, can you help me with this? So he showed me the ropes, and it's so funny going back to it again for the millionth time because I always remember where I got stuck was literally the first level in the game. The first level in the game, you have this minefield. And by the way, the game slams you with tutorials. So me being a kid, I know I was just rapid firing through these, not really processing the information, and continue to run into this minefield. It's funny, going for the gameplay for this video, I ran to that same mine and I was like, oh my God. I knew what to do and I still died here. That's amazing how this life has come full circle here. Now we're talking about it. But yeah, my brother's friend walked me through, oh, you have to use the stealth mechanic and then you get like a sensor that turns on. There you can see the mines on the ground. And from there, it was like my brain unlocked. I got through the entire first act of the game, fought Sabretooth, and moved on. And I was like, oh my God, it's that moment as a kid that you really live for with games. You stick with it for weeks. And then you just have this moment where it clicks and it's like your brain evolves in real time. That was this game for me. It just clicked. Oh, that's how you get through the minefield. And everything else just fell into place. And I beat the game. And it was one of the best feelings ever. But it was not without struggle. And to this day, it will be done not without struggle. Why is that? This game doesn't have checkpoints. I think this is, as you can tell by the visual quality on screen, a great re-release candidate. Like, it looks the part. I always get a kick out of the 3D portraits. They remind me a little bit of like Kingdom Hearts 3, where the health bar has like the 3D models there, and just some of the faces that the bosses make as they're kind of like scoping out the scene while you're fighting. There's like this nostalgic value to it for me. But there's no checkpoints for this game, and so you will encounter some really BS deaths. Like, the game's not afraid to challenge you, which is cool. But you'll have moments where like, oh, hey, laser traps. And you get by one and it deletes your health bar. And they're like, hey, champ, want to restart the whole level? I can't just, start from a checkpoint. No, got to restart the whole level. Oh, you died in this random fight where you were just getting like triple teamed? Want to restart the level? What? Yeah, so this has aged pretty poorly in that regard. There's a lot of charm to this game that I'll break down, but no checkpoints in this game made it ridiculously tough. Now imagine me at like 8 years old, I think, trying to figure this thing out. And they'll throw missions at you, like in the second chapter, your healing factor is completely disabled. So your main way of getting your health back is gone. And they want you to stealth through an entire level as a helicopter is shooting you from the sky. There's another stage in Act 4 where you have to wear a disguise, and pretty quickly that disguise dissipates and you're fighting mutant hunters that are way tougher and they will absolutely rinse you. And if you make one mistake, you die and you retry. It's a very classic game in that sense. Like, I kind of appreciate it for that. I kind of like that I fire it up and I figure it out over time and I gradually beat the level. In truth, these levels aren't super long. If you don't get lost, like, you can get through most levels in 15, 20 minutes. But when you consistently lose that amount of time and the pressure starts to heighten as you get to that point that you lost progress in for like the third time, things start to feel a little unfair in that regard. And so I think the game could do a lot better if it got re-released with some sort of checkpoint system. Or, you know what, if it ended up coming out in that PS2 on PS5 emulation system they got going on over there, hey, that'd be sick, because then you can just create save states and that would be awesome unto itself. I would love this game to just have a trophy system attached to it. That'd be so cool. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what is good about this game? I've talked a little critically of it and highlighted an awesome deleted scene. Maddie, you really haven't justified yourself here. Well, as you've already been able to tell by looking at some of the gameplay and the visuals, you'll notice here that this is very much disconnected from the movie itself. And I'll get into that a little bit more with the complete box experience. But yeah, like, this was why I really jumped into the comics and not the movies, in a manner of speaking. Not because I really didn't purely want to, but I connected with this version of Logan, like this appearance of him. It's so funny because I can't think of Logan or Wolverine, not as Hugh Jackman nowadays. But I look at the Logan in this game and the loading screens were comic book covers. And the way I connected with the comics here, like, this just unlocked a whole level of intrigue for me. Like, the X-Men did so much for me in the terms of comic book appreciation. The unlockables were comic book covers, and they would unlock new costumes that you could get. And there were some really cool ones here. Of course, you had like the classic yellow outfit. You also had the more leather jacket appearance. You had the X2 suit that you could wear. There was one from like a tie-in comic with the Hulk that you could wear. There were some really awesome deep cuts here. And so I loved the unlockables in this game. Like, there was something very special about the late 90s, early 2000s Activision Marvel push. I know it got pretty muddy later on, but they made some really cool stuff because they had like real true comic book fans, and I think the proof's in the pudding. You look at some of the X-Men games, look at Marvel Ultimate Alliance, speaks for itself. But also the story I found to be pretty good. Did you know that Wolverine is voiced by Mark Hamill in this game? This was news to me, so pardon me if you already knew this, but I thought that was a really awesome revelation. Patrick Stewart is back as Professor X, which is also cool to see, but Mark Hamill as Wolverine, like, I already love Mark Hamill for his work as Joker, Luke Skywalker, of course, all these iconic characters, but I had no idea this one random niche Wolverine game, he was the main lead in. So unbelievable. Once I found that out, I was like, oh, I hear him in that, and it made it so much cooler. But potentially what's cooler than that are the strike moves, and they literally define the cool factor in this game. So the combat's pretty simple. When you make contact with an enemy by attacking them, you'll see there's a lock-on camera, and you can engage in a couple combos, mixing up your X and circle buttons, or your A and B buttons, or your B and I think it's X buttons on GameCube. Anyway, you're gonna go ahead and mix and match these combos, and a lot of it's just jabs. You can retract or bring out your claws whenever you want. If you bring your claws in, you will start to activate your healing factor, so then you'll be a little less effective in combat, but you'll get some health back. So there's some really cool mechanics active here, but it's when you weaken your enemies or you get surrounded in just the right way and you activate a strike move. I think that there are some in here. If you look up strike move compilations on YouTube for X2 Wolverine's Revenge, there are some seriously sick moves that you can pull off. And the way you unlock them is by getting dog tags. So as you go around and complete little challenges and levels like stealth kills or a really cool strike move or beating a boss, they'll drop dog tags. And these dog tags allow you to unlock, all these strike moves. Now, I always cheated a little bit as a kid and would get the cheat code for the strike moves and unlock those. I would do that because as you get later in the game, these strike moves are like paramount to your success. Like I talked about stage 4, and like if you're just pulling out a strike move that targets 2 enemies, like that's low damage, low level attack. It's not going to do the trick. Like enemies elevate, and so you need your strike moves to elevate with you. As a kid, you don't really understand that. Why am I doing less damage? You got to go back and get your dog tags. And so I found this to be a really cool component of the game that aged quite gracefully. But yeah, the combat's not anything to like lose your mind over, but I think when you combine the story of, hey, Wolverine has a virus and he's got 48 hours to live because he's an escaped mutant, and the idea behind the Weapon X facility was, hey, these mutants might get out, they could be dangerous to us, and so we're gonna kill them off basically if they do manage to get out. And so he's got 48 hours to live, he's trying to find a cure for this virus, and that is this whole kind of story, this mission to survive. And I mean, I think it's some really good stuff. Like, I thought it was a surprisingly mature story nowadays, but I also really like how there's blood in this game. I look at Wolverine and I think of a character that needs blood in his games. It's so funny because this is really my pure introduction to, like I mentioned, the X-Men world. So I think this defined a lot of my expectations. That's why I love games like X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like I look at that game and go like, all right, like, yeah, like that's how it should be done, right? That's that level of gore, that level of blood, or the Logan movie, like that's how it should be done. So yeah, I got a little bit more to say, ladies and gentlemen, but I want to go ahead and get into this very special complete box experience for X2 Wolverine's Revenge on PS2. So let's check it out. All right, here we have X2 Wolverine's Revenge. Front cover is a little deceiving when you think about it a bit. It's all Hugh Jackman energy here, but the whole game, as you'll see, even in some of the screenshots on the back, right here is a good one. I mean, look at the difference. It's based on the comic books, but you can see here they were using the movie as promotional material. So you may pick this one up thinking, oh, it's a tie-in game to X2. I mean, technically it is that, but it goes on a completely different route with the story and the character models and the likenesses and the references. Everything is very comic book driven here. Anyway, breaking down the story here on the bottom left, it says decades ago, a secret organization brainwashed you and implanted a virtually unbreakable adamantium skeleton into your body. Now, as Wolverine, the X-Men's most dangerous weapon, you've discovered you were also implanted with a deadly virus that will kill you within the next 48 hours unless the antidote is found. Your future is at risk. You must return to confront your past at the sinister Weapon X facility. Time is running out, and so is your life. There's also a Baskin Robbins offer on the inside. How about that? On the top right, they start breaking down the gameplay. Unsheathe your razor-sharp claws, unleash lethal combo attacks, and use accelerated healing powers as you tear into intense action and stealth sequences. Then they say here, enter, you know, sometimes when you're reading, you just make up a word. Like this says scenarios, but I'm like sequences. I don't know. Like brain's a funny thing, isn't it? Anyway, enter the realm of senses using your heightened mutant senses to see scent particles and detect heat when tracking enemies. So yeah, you can smell farts in this game. How about that? And then you can kill your enemies. Yeah, that's the whole point of it. And then face off with Sabretooth, Wendigo, Juggernaut, and Magneto, while Professor X and Beast help you search for a cure. On the inside here, it's a little less eventful, I won't lie. This manual has been weathered down, but this is one of the first games I picked back up when I started rebuilding my collection. This is, as I mentioned earlier, a big part of my childhood. Unfortunately, no real illustrations, which I thought was a bit of a letdown, but on the information front here, pretty deep prologue. I consider this one of those mandatory reading sort of manuals because the story does really just drop you right in the middle of things, right? Like the opening cutscene, you just see Wolverine with the helmet on and you just can infer a lot of information, but this gives you a little bit more backstory. And like even here it says, X2 Wolverine's Revenge is a Wolverine solo adventure where you get to play the ultimate living weapon and world's toughest X-Men member. And they break down all the choices here. It says to begin a new adventure, select new game from the main menu in case you couldn't figure that one out. All the main menu options are here. This is also where you would put in the cheat codes. As a kid, guilty as charged because, as I've already mentioned, game is tough. Here we have the controls. A lot of different attacks and approaches and combos, especially with the strike system. Was really fun to set up certain things in this game. The basics, they break down your healing factor, claws, your feral rage, like a lot of mechanics working in the background, some requiring more patience than others. Dog tags, they define as the currency in the game, so you get more of those, you unlock more strike moves, more combo moves, all that fun stuff. The pickups in the game, comic books, the secrets you can get here, which allow you to unlock new costumes, new lore, all that fun stuff. There are challenges as well. The jukebox is here in the game. And then you get to the back with Lady Deathstrike and some credits. They're promoting the strategy guide, which felt like pretty necessary stuff back then. They also are promoting the Ultimate Spider-Man with a free subscription at Marvel.com. They have this little marketing slip here for Activision. And then that is really it when it comes to a complete box copy of X2 Wolverine's Revenge. It's not the most exciting one, but still a lot of nostalgia packed into this game for me. So there are stealth segments in this game beyond your typical action combat. I already mentioned how there's a little bit of a loose disguise system. It's more like specific missions give you a disguise, and as long as you keep your claws away and you don't do anything too out of pocket, then you'll be fine. But there's also just stealth takedowns, and I think in the Weapon X facility, this mechanic really shined because there's times where they do dead giveaways. Like there's a ton of cutscenes in this game where you'll be running around, cutscene, and you'll see like enemies setting up to wait for you, and they'll give those away. But as I was like crawling through the facility, I saw certain enemies were going through their own walking patterns and then like waiting on walls, looking for me. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like this is the best AI in gaming, even back then. But I think for the patterns they had, the way they were behaving, it was very believable. There were times the AI wasn't great, like in combat where they would have two enemies swinging at you at once. Like some of these enemies are just relentless, but there's also times like some enemies with guns won't open fire on you while you're fighting someone with your fists because like that would be just horribly balanced. But there's times that they don't care and they just unleash on you. And there's times you get stunned and then everyone shoots you. And that's where the frustration can mount because the stealth isn't perfect and the combat isn't perfect. And when that's okay if you had a better checkpoint system, but it can get a little frustrating. You have to constantly restart levels. And the other annoying thing is like, it doesn't even keep your collectibles. So you want to find your collectibles, you got to do all of that over as well. But there are a lot of elements here. It's funny, as you saw in the complete box segment, they do highlight like, make your choices, you know, stealth or action, but it's not as open-ended as presented. But it does present a pretty cool idea of like, what could an X-Men game look like with Wolverine, where he has these sorts of options, like an Arkham style, if you will, Wolverine game, where he has the stealth and the action and what that could be like. Maybe we get that from Insomniac. I hope so, because that sounds incredible. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for indulging me in this one. This is such a special game for me. I actually remember as a kid, dressed up as Wolverine for Halloween. I wish I had pictures of it. I don't think I do, but I distinctly remember having like the plastic claws from Party City and the whole X2 outfit and just thinking it was so cool. Like, that's why I dressed up as like Jango Fett, because I first found him in Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which we'll be talking about next month. But I found him in that game and then watched all of the old prequel movies afterwards. So a lot of these games are what defined my childhood in so many ways, obviously, but like even things beyond that, like who I was going to dress up as in Halloween. So I remember this game for me was like why I wanted to be Wolverine. That was really cool. So yeah, I'm very curious if this one resonates with anyone out there. I mean, sometimes we get these videos on Retro Rebound, like the Clone Wars video. I put it out there like, yeah, it's gonna flop and that sucks. Now it hurts for a little bit, but it's okay. We got it off our chest. And it ends up doing like 100K views, which is awesome. So thank you for that kind of support. I'd love to see just even like 10,000 people find this kind of an interesting topic and a game that they may try out sometime, because I think I talked about it with the movies on Rewind a lot, but there's a lot of charm to these early 2000s superhero movies and games because there's not really a template back then. So everyone's kind of figuring it out over time. But nonetheless, that's all I got to say. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. So fire away. If you want a little more X-Men action, go ahead and check the link in the description down below. Check out what we're doing at Retro Rewind, where we're talking about X2 right now, among many other X-Men things and movies that you'd be surprised I have not seen yet, like, hey, even The Matrix. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll catch you next time in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.